Welcome back, everybody. It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is Cyber Warrior Studios, and I know you're all here for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour. And if you give me about 10 seconds, we're going to get into it. I promise. Look, I'll be right back. I just wanted to introduce the show, let you know we got an amazing guest plan. And as always, questions, comments, concerns, always welcome. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you in a minute. And I'm back. And look, with me this evening, I have the one and only InfoSec, Pat, from Thirsty Thursdays. Pat Gorman, how you doing this evening?
Good. How about yourself? Happy Friday, and Ray, and all the good stuff. Super stoked.
Yeah, man. I mean, so there's a lot going on in the world of cybersecurity today. I think I saw a DDoS attack on Microsoft that is being attempted. A few other different ransomware groups out there doing their thing. So as far as like current events, because I want that to be kind of a topic for the day. What have you seen that is kind of interesting and kind of piqued your interest?
Yeah, one thing that I actually saw was a buddy of mine overseas this week. He actually put something on breach forums. And he is a hacker himself, and he hacked 100 hackers, which was really, really interesting. And he created a fake ransomware, put it onto breach forums. And if those folks that don't know what breach forums, it's just a forum where you can find breaches, I guess. And yeah, that was really, really cool and really interesting. I looked into it. I spoke to the person that did that, and it was really, really interesting, and the reasoning behind it. So it was pretty cool.
So what was the reason? That is intriguing. Like I seen a post about that. Actually, came across one of my cybersecurity signal chats.
Christian, right? Was his name Christian?
I didn't get a chance to read it.
So I think his reasoning behind it, or the reasoning behind it, was like just because to educate, don't just click on things. And his thing was he had a piece of ransomware. It called back to a C2 framework that he wrote. And yeah, that was pretty much I guess the purpose was be careful. So, he was, I'll try to find it while we are chatting and shoot it over in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting because we see things like, what is it? The guy that calls the scammers and gets into their computers and
Pierogi.
Like
Yep.
Yeah. So when I see things like that, I always laugh. Especially when he's actually in their system and watching their cameras, and they're like, "What do you mean?" But as far as like hack the hackers, because when you're looking at scammers, they're not necessarily hackers, right? They're just social engineers. Social engineers, which is a form of hacking, but they're manipulators. They're things like that. But when it comes to legitimately breaking into a hacker's machine, like it makes you wonder. It really does, because I've noticed even some of the most sophisticated phishing attacks, if you can find where they're harvesting their data, which is normally the same website that they're phishing out of, a lot of times if you scan those directories, you'll find all the data. Like, I've legitimately done it to where I go to these phishing sites and then start brute forcing directories and find where the data's hosted.
Exactly.
They're holding all these credentials.
Yeah, and usually it's pretty much like if you're using some kind of, like if I'm going to do something like that to test and for educational purposes, I'll do port forwarding with something called Nginx, and I'll forward my traffic through there, and I'll have my phishing site hosted somewhere so it traverses that traffic and forwards that traffic. Right. And now usually it's like, in the root of wherever you have that application / user-creds.txt, and everything is housed there. So if someone gets a hold of that, for every credential that was harvested, it resides right in that root directory of wherever the application is running from. So it's like, if you compromise my machine and get into that directory and just wget it, pull it down to your local machine, it's a wrap,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see because people consider hackers to be, or rather attackers, right? Malicious attackers and malicious, hackers, to be sophisticated and do all these miraculous things.
Hmm.
But in reality, I when I look at a lot of this, they are very insecure in the way they do things. So if you are willing to take that risk that they're not watching their systems, a lot of times you can get in and get
Hmm.
whatever you want.
Hmm.
I know people that have literally attached, tracking pixels to emails, to email back to these people to get the same information. Like, so what do you do? So you're here, got it. And they're like, what? What do you mean? What are you talking
Yeah.
about? I'm not. I'm actually Michael Jackson. I'm still alive. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So I always find it interesting when you see things like that, and just the lack of awareness that they have of the fact that what they do can be turned around on them.
Exactly. And I like that you bring that up because I have a video on my channel. It's about geo tracking, and we can just utilize this honeypot or this canary token per se. And now this canary token is executed by the end user or the whatever.
Mhm.
And it'll pull down all your geolocation, your metadata, latitude and longitude. It's pretty much how we can harvest or get some credential, no, not credentials, like get the information for an example of metadata in like a picture. Same kind of concept if you're doing like OSINT and using like extraction of metadata to see the longitude and latitude, and yeah, it's some interesting stuff that we can do out there on the interwebs, and you just have to be really careful. I put
Well,
the
well,
link in
but
there,
that
so if you guys want to check it out.
but that also goes back to, like, when you look at things, you can't always though um, assign blame to a particular country, group, or anything
Hmm.
because of VPNs. Because even with that tracking pixel, if they're forwarding all their traffic through a VPN and multiple VPNs at that,
Hmm.
it's going to come back with the wrong location anyways.
Absolutely,
So though it's
but
possible, it
yeah,
is very unreliable.
exactly. If you get into the feds, if it's a case, at the end of the day, with anything, right, with a VPN or a Tor browser or something, you always have an entry node and you have an exit node. And that's what people sometimes forget. So anytime I'm doing anything on the dark web, right, I want to connect to a VPN first. And in my Tor settings, you can set up a folder, a setting within your Tor browser prior to connecting. Because now the entry node will be through the VPN. Once I kill my VPN, that data from the VPN back to Pat's house is not traceable. you
Right,
know they're going to only get to the exit and the entry node of the Tor browser connection. So if
right,
I'm connecting from my house, then obviously I leave that little paper trail and then it's a wrap.
right. Yeah, it's always interesting. I get intrigued by things like that because I look at it. I'm like, people want to assign, I can't think, attribution,
Hmm.
and I'm like, especially when it's within like 30 minutes.
Hmm.
Like, people will literally attribute something. You'll see articles come out, and it'll be like, oh, within 30 minutes, an article gets dropped, and it's like, oh, it's Russia or it's North Korea, and I'm like, you realize that if I wanted to do something malicious and have you blame it on one of your enemies, I can stand up an AWS server or some other server,
In
have another
different regions.
computer
Yep.
here, bounce it all over,
Hmm.
and like, oh yeah, here you go.
Yep. Exactly.
So like it's always intriguing to me because you see that a lot, even in the news, even in like a lot of these um cybersecurity people that'll write these articles, and
Hmm.
sometimes they're opinion pieces, sometimes it's, oh, this is where we're at now. But then you'll notice an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later, sometimes even a day or two later, they'll have to go back and change what they wrote
Hmm.
because, oh, we were wrong.
Hmm.
I'd rather be right than be first.
Yeah, 1000%.
That's just me.
No, no, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, because why revise it multiple times when you're just trying to get that out there versus take your time and get it done the first time, and
And
it
again,
may take.
even if you want to break the news first, a lot of times, as long as you're not attributing it to an actor or giving specifics and how something was done,
Mm-hmm.
then you can do that. You can break the news first with almost like a semi-factual piece of, hey, we received word that this company was breached. We have no further details, but this is the information we want to give you.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, hey, so this company was breached in this way by this sophisticated attack, and da 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 da. And then you're going to go back like 2 days later because the FBI or whomever got in there and was like, oh no 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 no, oh no, it was done
Uh-huh.
this way. And then you're like, oh crap, now I got to go back and edit. Hey, there were updates to this article as of this day. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, you wouldn't have put all that information in there. Yeah, you're going to update it, but at least now we don't need to be going, oh, wait, this is completely different from what you
Yeah,
wrote.
exactly. Yeah, that's so true. I'm just looking at the comments as well.
Hey, William, I am live every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, unless, of course, my kids are in football and another one in marching band, and then I can't do it. But, we're back, so that's all that matters. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, the news has been crazy with cyber stuff. I see it come across Signal all the time. In your opinion, do you think that things are going to get worse over the next few years in terms of ransomware, critical infrastructure, things like that?
I think so. Yes. The reason being is because infrastructure as a service, infrastructure as code, it's so easy. And if those folks out there aren't familiar with like Pentest GPT or White Rabbit Neo, these, especially White Rabbit Neo, right? Like I'm not a coder at all, zero, zilch, right? So I was tinkering around when Christian showed me, he was talking about, and I put that in the chat so everyone can see it. And I literally went to White Rabbit Neo, asked me to write a piece of ransomware in Golang, and put the decryption key in C:temp. I just put it, it spit out the code, but then you can make minor tweaks to put everything where you want when the ransomware is executed. And I put this in a sandbox environment. In 3 minutes, I had ransomware, and I'm not no coder, right? So to answer your question, absolutely, because there's going to be way better people than me writing these kinds of things that understand this a lot better. I just took willy-nilly shot, and whatever code it gave me, I'm just praying it works. I don't really know what it's really doing.
And but that's what people don't. That's the other thing that I think, especially pen testers, red teamers, and script kiddies, especially, don't understand. There's Metasploit exploits that you can get off of like GitHub or why can't I think of the other one?
Exploit.db.
Yeah, exploit DB. That are purposely screwed up. That way you have to understand what you're doing in order to operate it.
Exactly.
Make the right changes. Or there were malicious hackers out there before that would put malware in their malware. So like, if you were to run their ransomware or their C2 server, it actually backdoored its way into your system. So they were watching you while you were watching everybody else.
Yep.
And like, if you don't know how to, at the very least, read code, I'm not saying you have to know how to write it. You have to understand what you're looking at. If you cannot do that, please stay the hell away from malware. In all intents and purposes, unless you're in forensics and things like that, stay the hell away from malware. Because you're going to do something stupid and pwn your own system, thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to run this exploit."
And the funny thing is that you say that. The funny thing you say that because once I start, like maybe I'm undercutting my skills on code. Like I don't really code, but I understand what code's doing. So I remember when I was starting to learn. It was like 3 years ago. I was starting to learn malware analysis and understanding what Rumnex Linux is and putting malware.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it is definitely a cool Linux distro. So if those folks out there, there's a repository on GitHub called the Zoo, the live malware. So I was dumb as hell. I didn't know what I was doing. Thank God it was one of my VMs, knock on wood. So I was like testing something and I blew up my VM, right? Because I was testing malware. I double clicked on something and it screwed everything up. And I did not take a snapshot of my VM, so I had a boo boo, and it was like my only good working Windows machine. So I was like, oh shit, and it sucked because like I had my Active Directory lab, everything, so it was joined to my domain, and it was just like it was all set up, or my group policy, everything was good to go, and my dumbass like clicked on a piece of malware. And going back to your question, don't just willy-nilly click on something when you don't know what it's actually doing. Instead of doing that, you can take that piece of whatever, because it's compiled, right? Compiled into like an executable, but prior to that, it's maybe C# or CS or whatever. And now you can put this into a application like Visual Basic Studio, whatever, and look at the code. And that's where you don't have to know how to code, but if you can parse through that and understand, now with all these other GPTs, you can take that and you can put, is this safe, in one of the GPT prompts and fucking throw it in there and they'll spit you back the results. But 3 years ago, I didn't know how to do that, or I didn't even know if that existed. But yeah, it was interesting.
Dude, I used to use Flare and Windows Flare, which I don't think is maintained anymore.
No.
And then Remnux. Mm-hmm. And there was another one. I know I liked Flare more, but there was another one from the SANS course because I went for reverse engineering malware. So I think they had their own Windows distro that they used. It might have been Flare. I don't remember. They might have been just utilizing that one. I can't remember offhand. But Remnux was great, but the Windows version was better because Windows is more targeted at. Mm-hmm. So it was better for the purpose of, okay, let's put this in a debugger. Let's see what it's doing step by step. Mm-hmm. But what people don't understand, even, I never did it, but I really, really wanted to create a piece of malware that wasn't malicious at all. It was just there to piss off forensics people, to where it would see if it's in a debugger, close the debugger, and then do nothing else. Like, that's all I wanted it to do. I legitimately wanted it to do nothing. Maybe send out some trickle of something just to make you think it was malicious. That way, anytime it went into a debugger, it would close the debugger. That's all I really wanted to do.
That would be a fun little prank.
But I so wanted to. Me and my buddy talked about it when I was going through the SANS course, and we ended up not pulling the trigger on it. But it would have been so funny. And I told the instructor that. He goes, "I would murder you."
Yeah, definitely.
Because how do you figure out what it's doing if you can't debug it? If you can't really see anything, it's like Stuxnet. Stuxnet did nothing. It was it legitimately did nothing until it got to what its target was. Mm-hmm. Then it did something. Up until that point, it was an idle piece of code that just it would go from the hard drive to another USB drive to a hard drive to another USB drive. So eventually it got to its target. It was like, oh, this is what I'm on. Let's go and phone some shit. That was it. Like, I wanted something that legitimately just looked for debug and would not let you use them at all. Just for fun. But sick. You have to have it do something that's deemed malicious, just for somebody to be willing to open that debugger and have it.
That would have been classic. That would have been.
But nah, man. I mean, other than that, I think that malware, finding 0 days, bug hunting, even reverse engineering, all that, it's very interesting. And I think a lot of people could do a lot of good with it, and there's a lot that can come of it. I sometimes wonder that, is there much to be gained financially from being a reverse engineer, like, in that space? Like, is there much real, other than, unless you can get big on your own, do you think there's very many companies out there that really pay to be a reverse engineer?
So I don't even know if he's doing it as much anymore. And you had him on your show, Jacob. Him and Hannah from Dark Wolf, those are the only two people that I knew that did reverse engineering for a career. Like, they're going in, looking at IoT devices on the internet and finding these devices and reverse engineering the code. Because a lot of the reverse engineers are on these Linux and IoT devices, embedded Linux devices. But you know, I don't know what they were making, but I don't really know too many reverse engineers. I think it would probably be baked into
The digital
a
forensics realm.
yeah, like yeah, exactly. I would say like it's like saying, oh, you're just going to be an internal pen tester, right? No, like if you're a pen tester for a company, you know, you're probably going to be doing internal, external, social engineering, phishing campaigns, web apps, blah blah blah. Unless like there's like depending on how big the organization is, right? Then you're going to have your, you know, your specializations, maybe low level binary exploitation, which ties in with reverse engineering, and then you have like your mobile device pen testing and all this good stuff. But the generic pen testing is like, okay, you know, you're going to have it across the board, across your portfolio. But reverse engineering, I think, ties into maybe that low level binary exploitation, um, and forensics and all that stuff that
I kind of
looks at the low
relate
level.
the reverse engineering piece to almost being like a researcher for like a college, right? You got your physics, you know, the people to research whatever, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Physics, no, it's not physics. Why? Really forgetting words today.
It's been a
But
long
yeah,
week.
like my words are like not there today. But like if you watch Big Bang Theory, like they're all
Hmm.
researchers. That's all they do.
Yeah.
So not to say it pays well, but it pays.
Yeah.
So that's what I would relate a reverse engineer to, unless you're in with a company that's doing forensics and doing the investigation,
Hmm.
then it's a little different.
Yep.
But if that is your sole purpose, is just hey, I just want to reverse engineer malware for a living, I think that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Uh, let's see. So we've got John Good. I've seen some jobs before with major defense contractors and maybe AV companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking. Is like it would have to be with an actual organization, but you're doing more than just the reverse engineering.
Yeah. Like Dark Wolf.
Um,
Dark Wolf is a defense contractor.
yeah.
Um,
Let's see. What would be the best way to start reverse engineering malware coming from a support desk employee? Um, True. Remnux, and or if you can find any variant of Windows Flare. And then what was the site you said, Pat, for finding live malware?
the zoo.
Yeah.
So the zoo is in GitHub. So if you go to GitHub and you just type in the zoo live malware repository, that will give you a live. And then you can just you know go on to Google or YouTube University and just put in some reverse engineering or live malware. Something like I have a few videos on it when I was tinkering around like with my journey, and it ended real quick because then it started getting a little over my head. But yeah, like I think at the end of the day, you just have to start tinkering with it, and it's like with anything, and
Yeah.
persistence is
And
key.
especially start understanding what is it? Assembly,
Yeah,
C, and Python. I think are the big three right now for Java. Java's huge, especially with
yeah,
web. Uh
and understanding what the hell is the yeah, oh my god, reverse engineer.
I mean, there's courses on it too, all over the place between
Mm,
LinkedIn,
mhm,
YouTube, things like that. Just how to reverse engineer software, let alone malware.
mhm,
The big thing with malware, and the reason why it's more difficult, and why things like Remnux and stuff like that come into play, is because it has tools like a fake DNS server. So it'll make the malware think it's talking to the internet when it's not. So, and the reason for that is there are particular pieces of malware that if it cannot talk to the internet because you've killed the network connection, it will actually go idle. It won't do anything anymore,
mhm,
or it'll wipe itself. So you have to give it a DNS server. You have to give it some form of communication so that it'll continue to operate, so that you can figure out what it's really trying to do.
mhm.
And that's where, DNS resolvers and things like that can be run locally really come in handy.
Yeah. I think that's so true. I'm trying to find this thing. Uh,
Wisty, YouTube University is just our way of saying YouTube.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that
Ghidra.
Ghidra's they have it for both operating systems. I used it primarily on Windows, but yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's the thing I was thinking about Ghidra. Understanding that, getting into the code, and that's the software that you're going to do for reverse engineering.
Yeah, William, that's the other thing. There are pieces of malware that it will go idle or go to sleep if it determines it's in a sandbox. So you can upload that shit to VirusTotal all day and it won't do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
VirusTotal will kick back. Oh yeah, you're clean. No.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to if you execute. That's why bare metal machines are the best to run this on. But they're isolated bare metal machines, meaning they're not attached to any network.
Yeah, they're air gapped.
You can give it an internet connection, but I would not attach it to any local network. The reason for the internet connection is again to run things like Wireshark or something like that to see where C2 connections are being made. You can see what it's scanning, because especially with IDA, yeah, Javier, IDAs. I forget who. Oh shoot, what is the company that does the IDA? I know what you're talking about. Made with bare metal. No, bare metal laptops, my guy. Desktops. Kill
They
them.
are. Yeah, they are.
I know you know what I was talking about and just making jokes, but you're still a prick for that. Oh, no, you don't. So, all right. If you know you have a live piece of malware and you execute it in a sandbox and it does nothing. So let's say you have it in a VM that only has an internet connection, but nothing else. Or even if you kill the internet, let's say it has no connection to the outside world at all. It will detect that and shut down. It will do nothing for you. Some will still operate. Some will still try to call out every 10 seconds and be like, oh, I need to make a connection to whatever. And it'll just cycle through its reserves of IPs and or DNS hostings. Mm-hmm. But sandboxes can be bad because it'll shut the malware down. It'll detect that it's in a virtual machine or something like that, and it'll just shut down. Which is why I say bare metal is probably the best. So running it on a laptop that only has an internet connection, which means it would have to be isolated from the rest of your network. And if you can't do that, bare metal with the best EDR anti-malware that you can find.
Yeah. Or obviously if you're doing this in a home lab and you're trying to do this and that, obviously you have your main internet connection, and 99.9%, unless you're like Eminem using a BlackBerry from 1955, you have a smartphone, right? So you probably have a hotspot, so you can connect to that and use that as your egress, to get out to the internet as well. That's just an option. Or
there's a few different ways. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So
yeah, exactly.
You just gotta figure it out. It's again trying to figure out malware and see what it really does. It's always going to be tricky because there's so many different ways they can bypass you. They can shut down. They can go idle, or it could be some skid that just went up there and said, "Oh yeah, do all the things all at the same time," and
exactly.
Yeah, exactly, Snowman. So yeah. Other than that, all right. So we're at like halfway through the show, and one of the biggest topics of the show every week, and I will always try to go back to it, is breaking into the industry. And with that, we're going to have the other topic that me and you were discussing beforehand, which is why people leave, i.e., either the industry or their current position. Mm-hmm. So let's start with how to break in. What are some of the tricks of the trade? And again, we're older. We probably got in a long time ago where things were different.
Hmm.
But from what you've seen up to this point in your career, what are some of the tricks and some of the things you would kind of look at if somebody was trying to break in?
In 2024, 2025, yeah. So I think the biggest thing, like if I was to reverse back, say 15 years ago, and yes, I am getting old. So yeah, 15 years ago, I think the things I would do different if I was doing it today, obviously, yes, certifications and all that stuff is all good in the hood, right? But it doesn't mean, see, a certification just shows an employee that you're disciplined enough to start something and end something and get a piece of paper, right? That's all that's showing. Where can you showcase those skill set, right? Like, oh, you did your OSCP, right?
Mm,
Yeah, that is a practical, certification. So you probably know how to do some CTFE type things. But now, ha- have you ever took down maybe an Azure server or pen test an Azure environment, or understanding what tenant IDs are, or how we're going to pull a uh, like a graph API from Microsoft to maybe take over a tenant or whatever, if it's an internal assessment or whatever. Now, what you can do is set up a lab and document that lab, right? So now what is that showing me as like a hiring manager or someone that you're trying to break into the company that I'm working at? That's telling me that you have the discipline to understand where you're at in the different steps that showcases those kinds of techniques, those kinds of attacks. And not only because at the end of the day, this is the God honest truth, and I want to say it. I don't know if you took your exam, right? I don't know. I'm saying that because I'm just saying that. The internet is a funny place. So so now it's like, okay, now like what Derek and I do, or anyone on the internet, it's validating those things that you're saying on a piece of paper. Now showcase it. Maybe you don't have to show your pretty face like we do, but maybe you can make a video with just your sound, or get a GitHub, put your projects out there, just to get a little more involved with community. That's the main thing I was getting to. So networking and community is going to be your best bet of breaking into the field. You can have all the alphabet soup. I have quite a few certifications under my belt, and it doesn't mean I know shit. That's the God honest truth, right? But showcasing what I know validates more than a piece of paper. So, yeah, I'll go off my soapbox for now. So that's pretty much my advice to breaking in.
yeah, I think that's some of the biggest things that we talk about a lot on this show is the networking piece of it. And as a for instance, it was just the other day. One of my counterparts, one of the other managers that I work with, actually he's a director now. He's like, "Hey, how do you know so and so?" And I was like, "I don't. Let me look." So I went through LinkedIn. I was like, "Have we ever had a conversation?" Because we connected, but have we ever had a conversation? And I couldn't find any. So I was like, "Look," I said, "more than likely they were a veteran." So I accepted the connection. Plus, they were in cybersecurity, so I was going to accept that as well. I was like, "But we've never talked, so I cannot speak on who they are or what they know. Just
Hmm.
can't." So yeah, even on LinkedIn, like people will ask me all the time, "Hey, how do you know so and so? Or do you know so and so? Or how are you connected to them? Or whatever the case may be." And if we don't talk, or you're not, watching my show and trying to keep up, or Pat's show, or if I don't know your name, I'm gonna outright say I don't know you. Like
Hmm.
I can't speak to what you know because we've never talked.
Hmm.
Um, And so that's one of the biggest things, and that's why I tell people like Pat's show, my show, Hacker Valley Studio, like all these other cybersecurity shows out there. If you can get your face out there and get on there, even if you don't talk about everything you know on the show, a lot of times if you're not comfortable posting something on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, if you go on one of these shows, even if it's 30 minutes to an hour, before and after the show, there's usually more talking involved. Get to know the person as the person, not just the job and things like that.
Hmm.
And so when somebody asks me, "Hey, how do you know so and so?" I can say, "Oh yeah, we had a great conversation. They know their shit. This, that, the third," and it gives you more of that comfortability referring someone to do something. Um, But if you're not out there in some way, shape, or form making a name for yourself, I think breaking into this industry is incredibly hard right now, especially with the job requirements, because we are still in a situation with these antiquated job requirements and things like that. That you have to know somebody to at least get your resume through there, and then
Exactly.
that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I have a buddy that I talked to this week, and he's not 100% happy where he's at. I want to keep his name anonymous. And he has OSCP, OSEP, OSWE, and CRTP, CRTO for the red team, for certified red team operator. And he went through an interview process with a company. I'll leave it anonymous as well. And this kid got denied because he doesn't have a degree, right? But I know him, and he can run circles around a lot of people. You know what I mean? As a pen tester. And I'm like, when he told me that, he's like, he went through 3 rounds. So I'm like, that's stupid, because the first round they should have seen this on your CV that you don't have a bachelor's degree, right? So why even go to 2 and 3 if you? But that's no here or there. So obviously, when you apply for these positions, and I asked them to send me the job description, I wanted to see in the job description, it says nice to have bachelor's degree, not must have. So obviously he's working and everything. So it's not like he's, it was a better position. But that's where I would have argued. I would be like, okay, like Mr. So-and-so, you have this on the job description. You say nice to have, not must have. And this is the reason why I applied, because I do not have that. But, I thought it would be nice to have, but I don't have it. But I have certifications that way more than a bachelor's degree, right? And so, because I get the question, maybe we can tailor to this, like, oh, do I need a degree to get into the field? And 99% of the time, I always say, yeah, exactly. I always say, no, absolutely not. Some of the best, pen testers we're talking about in the offensive side don't even have a high school diploma. I know 4 people that I think he made like $700,000 in bug bounties last year, and three of them, and one dropped out of high school. The other one's a convicted felon, and you know what I mean. So it's like, and obviously, if you want to go work for Uncle Sam's company, yeah, you have to have a degree, but probably the guy that's hiring you probably know way more than. So it's like double-edged sword.
Like, got me when I worked hardware support for Department of Energy. I was actually a subcontractor for Department of Energy. And then they were hiring full time. And this was back before I went active duty in the Army. Mm-hmm. And I said, cool. I went up to the hiring manager. And I had known him. We had talked. And I said, I want to apply. And he was like, well, you need a 3.6 GPA. I said, no. He was like, well, that's what they require. I said, so you're going to pass on someone that has been here for well over a year, that knows your systems in and out, that can do the job better than anybody you're going to pull out of college because of a GPA. Mm-hmm. He was like, that's the requirement. He's like, however, if you get a CCIE, I'll hire you for 6 figures on the spot. And I said, no.
Yeah.
Anybody who hires based on GPA, like, let alone a degree, but a GPA from a degree, I don't want to work for it.
Yeah.
It's not worth my time, because that means you care more about, can I pass a test versus can I do the job?
Yeah. And I'm very, very transparent with everyone in any platform. And I'm not the best with grammar. I'm very, very honest with that. But I know the technical aspect of things. I remember when I was doing pen testing, and I would have to put my report through QA, and it was like my daughter wrote the report, right? Like, I got all the points.
I've seen some of the things you say, Pat. You work for me now. Yeah, I can see how that's possible.
Yeah, so it's like, oh man, like, this is interesting. But the technical aspect, I'll get DA and like everything that I'm actually conversing via report. Thank God we had a QA and had everyone. I had everything that was written before it went out to the client. But yeah, so like that's, it all depends on all the companies, or it depends on the company that you're going to work for. You just have to make sure you're, with an organization that's going to approve you for you, and understand and be very transparent with your pros and cons. Because that's one thing, like when I was, a director of OffSec, I remember I hired a tester. It was a 6-month contract because they didn't want to bring him on full time. They're like, okay, like, and same thing, like he had all these acronyms, all these things on his resume. And I'm not a web app tester. I can test web apps.
You're a liar. Yeah, you are. You can test all the things. Don't lie to us.
But I remember, and I was like, okay, like he said he had his OSWE as well. I don't have OSWE. Like I was just talking about the friend I was talking to this week.
I got OSDP and that's it. And you're lucky I got that one.
Yeah. And he was just like, yeah, I'm very good with cross-site scripting, SSRF, and all these, things, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, like I'm not the web app tester here. I do all the infrastructure. I do Azure. I do all the stuff that nothing with code. So you're good with code review. You're good with web apps. You're good with that stuff. Perfect. And it was funny because we got a 6 application test that month, or like in 2 weeks. But 2 weeks after we hired him, it was like, okay, perfect time, because they would have stuck my dumb ass on there and I would have been fumbling, Can I do web app testing? Yeah, I can, but it's not my favorite. And this kid didn't know what fuzzing was. He couldn't open up Burp Suite to get an interpreter to pass the traffic, which is a proxy. So you interpret the
Pat, you say that, but let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Can you compare columns in Excel?
I suck with Excel. I'm.
It's all jokes. It's all jokes. Look, it's true, because we do run into these people. But here's the thing: we have different expectations, right?
Yeah.
So and my expectations come based on level.
Mm-hmm.
This is a me problem. When you come into a cybersecurity role as a high-level junior and above, I'm not even going to say junior, but like a higher-level junior, like you've been in the field about half a year to a year, but you're still not kind of tipping the scales of knowledge towards mid-level. I expect a certain amount of foundational knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I expect you to know how to use Word, because you should be writing reports or doing some type of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And at that level, I would probably expect you to know a little bit about other avenues of your job.
Mm-hmm.
As you go up, I expect more of the communication and other things. So, like, that's the hard part for me when I look at people, is like, I had somebody that when I was going through my OSCP that was like, oh, how do I do this? And I'm like, and we would work, together on different labs and stuff like that.
Yep.
Not even the tests, just labs.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, you need to crack it. I was like, you already saw what blocks they are, so you know they're Windows.
Yep.
So you need to crack the Windows passwords. He's like, how do I do that? Like, you're going for your OSCP, which means you should have some base level knowledge of how to Google.
Yeah.
And
understand, like,
know how to do it, but Google.
Yeah, but if you're going for your OSCP, you should understand at that level, at the OSCP level, that's like your CCNA level in the Cisco world.
Yeah.
At that level, if it's a Windows password, it sits in the SAM database, or it's an LTLM-v2 hash or LTLM, and understanding you have to crack that with either mode 5600.
Only 2 files.
Yeah.
Is there system file and a .NET? I believe it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, Google is your friend. And he's like, but how do I do it? Google.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you the answer.
Yeah.
Like, are you on the box? Yes. Google how to crack Windows passwords. It'll tell you the files you need and what to do.
That's interesting. If he's already on, yeah. Because if someone said, I'm on the box, how do I crack the password? So you already got the password to get the initial foothold. So how the hell do you get the initial foothold?
So at this time, now they've changed things, so hopefully they don't get pissed at me for saying it. At this time, there was a particular box that you would go through the web and you were able to download. You couldn't necessarily get on the box itself.
Oh, okay.
You had to download the system file and the NTDS file.
NTDS.dit. Yep, NTDS.dit.
And then you had to use John the Ripper to, compile and crack and all that other shit.
Yep.
So I was like, dude, I said, I gave you one clue.
Mm-hmm.
You can get to the System 32.4.
Yep.
From the web. I mean, all you got to do is download the files and crack the passwords. How do you do that? I'm done. I was like, I ain't even talking to you no more. If you were literally asking me how to do the most basic of shit, I learned that when I first started learning how to do offensive security.
Yeah. So
how do I crack Windows passwords is like my common Google search.
Yeah, exactly.
So I always forgot which files I needed. It wasn't that I didn't know how to do it. I always forgot what the file names were.
Yeah.
I'm like, shit, what is it? System and NTDS or whatever.
Yep.
Always. Every time I got into a box, like, fuck, which ones are it?
Yeah. And I was talking to a friend about this because the last time I did a box, it was like a hack the box machine. I did Cicada. It was like last week or 2 weeks ago. And I'm not doing, hacking all day, every day anymore. So sometimes I'll forget. So I found this thing, and this is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, just making pen testers less, I don't know, less good or whatever, if that even makes sense in English. But so like something called pentestgpt.io. So
look, I'm gonna let you take the show and talk all about this because I ain't touched pen test nothing in forever.
Yeah. So
have it.
So if you're interested in offensive security and getting into the world of hacking and stuff like that, you can use ChatGPT, you can use all that good stuff. So there's something called pentestgpt.io. And what you can do, obviously you have like $25 a month. You can pay for, their pro edition. And I checked out a friend's pro edition. I got a tickle on my nose. I think a hair is tickling my nose. But so we were doing a box recently, and Bloodhound is a enumeration tool for Active Directory. So we can collect all the data that Bloodhound is going to give us from our AD infrastructure. With those files, we can upload this to to Pentest GPT, and it literally gives us the path for generic write, or if it's a Active Directory CS, which is certificate services, and we can abuse these services, and you can use different kinds of and packet tool sets and stuff like that to break into the system. So, and I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. This is really interesting. Let's see what else we can do with this Pentest GPT. And I was just writing little Python scripts to make my life easier during my CTFs, and it works. It really fucking works. So if you guys are interested in it, check it out. You won't be disappointed.
Damn it, you're still talking about this shit? God dang it.
Yeah, and I got this damn tickle on my nose, feeling I'm a crackhead.
No, the fun part is what you need to do. So beyond Pentest GPT, you need to use ChatGPT and convince it to give you malware. Because it will do it. If you give it the right prompts, it will do it.
Yeah. Teach me, guys, because I never got it. And that's why I would give up. Like if I was just to say, I'm on a pen test engagement, which is a CTF, and I'm running into a problem because my Bloodhound, whatever, what is the next shortest path to DA? And every time I would upload it, fucking yell at me, wah. And at DEF CON, a friend of mine was telling me about Pentest GPT. And I was like, no fucking way. This is that easy. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So if anyone's ever interested in offensive security, check that out and let me know what you think.
So all right. So next question. Going from entry level to mid level, how should people go about doing that? And that includes like bumps in salary and things like that. So what would be your advice to people that are like, I just broke in, I've been here for about a year or two, I'm trying to figure out how to move up. Like, what's your advice to people on that?
In cybersecurity?
Yes.
So I assume maybe
I
you
mean, you
work
could
at,
do it for any realm. Let's be fair.
yeah,
But
yeah. So, because obviously we only have 10 minutes and I don't want to give my story because it's going to be longer than 10 minutes, but I did the traditional, system admin, network engineer, security engineer, and then got into pen testing for a couple of years. And now I'm back on the defensive side. But what I would say would be first, if you're an entry level, maybe a SOC engineer, SOC analyst, right? Maybe just looking at logs and reporting logs and, maybe getting some phishing campaigns and reporting phishing and blah, blah, blah. If there's a department that's doing maybe the engineering aspect, say, hey, depending on how big or how small the company is, a huge company, it's going to be hard to converse with different teams. But if it's a smaller organization where you can just reach out to, if you're on teams, just look at whoever the hierarchy is and say, hey, I'm interested in security engineering, right? How can I'm currently a SOC analyst. I got my security plus, maybe my CYSA plus, and I really want to get into, you know, the real meat and potatoes. Can I shadow you? And this is what I did when I was a network engineer, right? So I went from a system engineer and I was scared of networks because I was scared of the command prompt. And I literally went to one of the network engineers when they were configuring routers and switches. I was like, hey, can I just shadow you when we don't have much going on? And I thought it was the coolest thing. And then I got into Cisco. Look at this thing's yelling at me. Cisco engineering, and that's pretty much how I would say how you can move up. And as far as salary, the way I did it, I went from, say, let's use it, $50,000, right? $50,000, and say for example, I know my skill set and my capabilities are worth maybe 75,000. So there's two options, right? You can say, hey, Mr. Manager, like I want to move up, and these certification, I did my due diligence. I want to do my, I don't know, CCNA or CCNP. We'll talk about the networking space. And the networking, the CCNA or CCNP salary medium is 75,000. If I accomplish this, can I get at least, can we meet halfway, maybe 68,000, something like that? If he says no, sorry, still do your CCNP and now leave. Because that's the only way you're going to really, unless you love and you're super loyal, that's going to be really hard because I've been in that situation and I'm a little bit in that situation now because, I love this guy. So like that's my opinion. That's my pathway of success. And, and this is my last thing and I'll shut up. Don't always chase the money because the money will come, but I think the support around your team is way more important because I've done this, right? I went from 50, I remember going from an MSP where I was there for 6 years, super loyal, I loved them so much. And I was making like 71,000 when I left. And I'm like, fuck, I really want to hit that six figures. And I was like 28 years old, 27 years old. And I was like, okay, I need to get this CCNP fucking thing and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I jumped ship for 105,000. And I was the most miserable SOB on this planet. Oh, I hated my life. Hated it. I'd rather be making 70,000 where I can just, take a stroll on the beach whenever I wanted to, as long as I got my work done. No one bothered me. This place, every fucking 5 minutes. Hey, you there? Your Skype. This is when Skype for Business was out. It went fucking yellow. Are you there? I'm like, yo, it's just like I'm on a different screen. So yeah, that's my 5 minute spiel. Yeah.
No, but I don't disagree, right? So for me to move up, I look at it a few ways. One is to work with your immediate supervisor. The other one is to always be pushing yourself to do better. You see, we put a lot of blame. We like to become victims a lot and say, "Oh, it's you're holding me down and you're not helping me out." Da da da. If you don't open your mouth and tell your immediate supervisor or even their boss what you're trying to get to, what you're trying to become, what your goals are, and asking for how can I get to here, right? Then I don't know how to help you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a hiring manager. I hired this dude over here. Like, I am in that position. So if you don't tell me what your goals are to get to A, B, and C or X, Y, and Z, I can't help you. And you have to be willing to open up about that. Like if you're telling me you want to get to, I want to be a mid-level engineer, and you're coming in a year of being in the company, cool. I'll tell you how to get there. You need to be able to show me how to do X, Y, because I either know how to do it or I have another engineer that can do it that can validate that you know your shit.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then you can't be in that position.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing, we should always be learning to be one level above, right? So we should be able to replace the level above us, but also do a level or two down.
Mm-hmm.
And me as a manager, I know how to do the engineering work. I may
Mm-hmm.
have to Google a lot of shit. Don't get it
Mm-hmm.
twisted, but I can do it, and I can make people think it is the best thing on earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I can do that, but I also, and one of the reasons why I have held myself back is I don't know how to do that next level above. There are pieces of it that are missing. So, in order for me to get to that next level, I have to be able to do that job. No one's going to promote you if you can't do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us in cybersecurity really like being thrown to the wolves because our brains go haywire and we start wondering what the hell I got myself into.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to have some semblance of balance. And unfortunately, we lose that. Now, the last topic I want to talk about, we do got about 4 minutes left on this episode, but me and Pat were talking about it beforehand, or why people leave companies. And you touched on it briefly, Pat. Um, and we've heard this on LinkedIn for probably the past 3, 4, 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
It comes up at least once a year.
Yep.
Why do people leave companies, Pat?
Yeah, I think I did touch on it, and like I said, I made a big mistake in my career doing that. Uh, so I left my company because I wanted more money. Right? It wasn't nothing to do with my immediate boss, but 99% of the time, you're not leaving a company; you're leaving your leader. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the company doesn't know how you're doing in your department, only you and your manager and your team. So if you don't have that supportive aspect or that supportive team or family around you, that's what you're leaving. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, people don't realize that. They're like, oh, I'm going to leave because they're not paying me. No, like you have some more internal problems that you're not conveying. That's really my my take on that.
I think it's twofold. I think part of it's money. Part of it's always going to be money.
Mm.
Financially, you want raises. You want to feel valued.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that value does come from your manager. It
Mm-hmm.
comes from your supervisor. It comes from your company. Um, so in this industry, in society, money is valued.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way we feel valued is if we're getting paid for what we do. So I do feel like companies that do 0 to 5 or 0 to 3% raises do not value their employees.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that's it, especially in the United States, I can't talk to any other country. I don't know how they operate. In the US, when your cost of living goes up 20, 30, 40, 50%, whatever the case may be, and your annual raise is 3%, you've not even met cost of living, my guy. Like,
Exactly.
I got to cut back now going into the next year
Mm-hmm.
because the cost of living now, the inflation has skyrocketed, and you gave me an extra 3% bump. Cool. Hopefully we can make this work. Like, we
Yeah.
haven't even met cost of living at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Military was the same way, right? And that's why people in this industry, IT, cybersecurity, unless you're not broken and still have that passion for the military, they get out in this industry because they're like, I can make more on the outside. Like, my
Mm-hmm.
cost of living of whatever retarded percentage you want to give us
Mm-hmm.
does not meet what the actual cost of living is. So why would I stay in? Like, I'm
Yeah.
making 60 grand a year to be a senior engineer, or 70 grand a year when I can get paid 150 to 175 on the outside. Like, and I'll find a company that I like and like work remotely and not have to do PT every day or have a rucksack, or go to the range, or go to the field, like, I'll go work for a company. So, like,
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
why these things happen. But to your point, if you pay someone well, even without the right raises, and I'll stay on that, even without the right raises, if you give them vertical movement to where if they get promoted now, they'll see that benefit. And on top of that, you treat them well. So
Mhm.
some people value flexibility and family time and the ability to go to appointments and things like that over the raise because they
Yeah,
budgeted their money well. They were already expecting to make less, whatever the case may be. There's reasons behind everything. If you treat your people well, even if they do leave you, it will be with severe hesitation, and somebody's going to have to pay them 20, 30 grand more a year in order to
yeah,
replace
yeah,
them. They will not leave for five grand more a year. They're not, because you treat them well. So it's like, all right, is the grass always greener on the other side? No.
exactly. And me personally, like in the position I'm in, it would probably have to be 60 grand more.
Yeah.
Um, that's the only way you're going to talk me out of the position I'm in. No, not even for 30 grand. I don't,
I've
because
done
like,
that. I've done that. I did that when I worked at CISO.
oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I did it too. Like
I
when I walked the
called
MSP.
Q Radar called me. I think it was Q Radar, one of the recruiters, and I forget what I was making at the time, but I gave them like 100 grand more a year is what it was going to take to get me. And they were like, "Well, we'll pay you this much." I said, "Sorry, you didn't meet my options." Deuces. Hung up the phone.
Yeah, exactly. And
They
that's another thing we can talk about this another time, but like know your worth as well. Um, and
Oh, I went way over worth. I legitimately did it just because I had just gotten this job. I'd only been there like 2 or 3 months.
yeah,
They helped me out my time of need. I loved what I was doing. I loved who I was working for. And I was like, if you're going to get me, you're going to make it worth my time.
yeah,
And I'm not even saying my skill set, just my time. Because,
yeah,
like, they helped me out in a time of need and
yep,
continued to help me out throughout my career there. Love them to death. CISO is an amazing company within Pittsburgh. But I just wasn't. I was like, I'm not leaving after 3 months. Like, what are you smoking? Like, I just got here,
yeah,
and you want to pull me? Nah, homie. And so they were like, we'll pay you this amount. I'm like, nope, you didn't hit my threshold of whatever they can get me.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, flexibility and just the fact that you have good management is so important. And
Yeah.
as we get older, as you get more in your career, and you value those relationships way more than a dollar. Like
Oh yeah.
I like I'm not eating ramen noodles, even God forbid something happened, thank God. But I will never, you know, settle for something that I'm not completely. We only live once. We only have one life. Life's too short, and why be unhappy? Just like you do on your motivational speech on your
I guess I'm
Instagram,
going
and
to that tonight. I got the topic, but we'll get there. Um, But yeah, so final words. We're well over. Well, I can't say well over, but we're over the top of the hour. For everybody that tuned in live, thank you for joining. If you're here for Team Replay, thank you for tuning into Team Replay. Make sure you hit tips, super chats, things like that. Also, Cash App, PayPal, all that stuff's on my website. Support us. Follow me on all social media. Before we cut out, Pat, any final words?
yeah, just believe in yourself. That's what I think. Things are going to get hard. Times are going to get hard. Your job's going to get hard. Stressful moments will happen. Crunch time will happen, and just take it day by day. We only have 24 hours in a day, and tomorrow your job's going to be there. You may not. So just remember that.
Definitely. Look, I love you all. As everybody knows, if you watch any of my other social media, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I don't know. I'm like everywhere at this point. Look, you're all my warriors, you're all my family, and look, I love every single one of you that tunes in every week. Anybody that's brand new, thank you for joining us for the first time ever. Otherwise, take care, have a good one, and I will see you next week with another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour.